They said she looked too young to be there, too small, too quiet. When she stepped off the transport in the Afghan highlands, the Rangers didn't even look up from their gear. They were waiting for their sniper support. She was standing right in front of them, but no one asked her name. No one offered a hand. They just kept waiting. And she stood there alone, watching them check their rifles, their scopes, their ammunition. Her duffel bag sat at her feet. Her orders were folded in her pocket. She didn't say a word, because she'd learned a long time ago that words didn't matter. Not here, not yet. Her name was Maya Torres, 19 years old, 5'3", 110 pounds soaking wet. She'd been the youngest graduate in her sniper class, top of her cohort in marksmanship, second in fieldcraft, first in patience. But none of that was written on her face. What they saw was a kid, a girl, someone's little sister who'd wandered into the wrong briefing room. The Ranger team leader, a broad-shouldered Texan named Sergeant Hale, finally noticed her standing there. He glanced at her name tape, then at her face, then back at the helicopter pad like he was still expecting someone else to arrive. "You lost?" he asked. She shook her head. "You need something." "I'm your sniper support," she said quietly. The silence that followed wasn't hostile. It was worse, it was disbelief. One of the Rangers, a guy with a thick Boston accent they called Rourke, actually laughed, not mean, just surprised, like she'd told a joke he didn't quite get yet. Hale didn't laugh. He just stared at her for a long moment, then pulled out his radio. Maya knew what he was doing, calling back to command, checking if there'd been a mistake. She'd seen it before, at every posting, every unit, every briefing, the double-checking. The quiet questions, the assumption that someone somewhere had made an error. She didn't blame them, not really. She looked young because she was young. She looked small because she was small. And in a world where size and presence often equaled credibility, she had neither, but she had something else, something they couldn't see yet, something that didn't show up in photographs or on personnel files. She had patience, the kind that came from being underestimated her entire life, the kind that taught you to wait, to watch, to let the world dismiss you until the moment it couldn't anymore. Hale's radio crackled. Command confirmed. She was their sniper. Orders were clear. He lowered the handset slowly, his expression caught between professionalism and doubt. He nodded once, stiff, polite. "All right then, gear up. We move in 20. She picked up her duffel, found a corner, started prepping her rifle. None of them talked to her. The mission was supposed to be routine. A valley recon. Intelligence suggested Taliban forces were using a network of caves to move weapons and personnel through the region. The Rangers were tasked with confirming activity and calling in air support if necessary. Maya's role was overwatch. She'd position herself on a ridgeline while the team moved through the valley below. Eyes in the sky. Insurance. Nothing more. At least, that's what Hale told her. His tone made it clear he didn't expect her to do much. Maybe she'd spot something. Maybe she wouldn't. Either way, the Rangers would handle the real work. They moved out before dawn. The terrain was brutal, steep inclines, loose rock, thin air that burned in your lungs with every step. Maya kept pace without complaint. Her legs ached. Her shoulders screamed under the weight of her gear, but she didn't slow down, didn't ask for breaks. She'd learned that too. Never give them a reason to doubt you. Never show weakness. Even when your body is begging you to stop. Even when the weight of your rifle feels like it's crushing your spine, you keep moving. Because the moment you falter, the moment you stumble, every assumption they made about you gets confirmed. Rourke glanced back at her once. She saw something flicker across his face. Surprise, maybe, or grudging respect. She didn't care which. She wasn't here to impress anyone. She was here to do her job. They reached the ridgeline just as the sun broke over the mountains. Golden light spilled across the valley below, illuminating a landscape that looked both beautiful and deadly. Hale positioned his team along the slope, spreading them out for maximum coverage. Then he turned to Maya, pointed to an outcropping of rocks about 200 meters upslope. "That's you," he said. "You see anything, you call it in. Don't engage unless I give the order." She nodded, climbed. The position was good. High ground, clear sightlines. She set up her rifle carefully, checking every detail, scope alignment. Windage, elevation, range card. She built a mental map of the valley marking distances, landmarks, potential threats. This was her world, the world of angles and equations, breath control and trigger discipline. Out here, size didn't matter, strength didn't matter. All that mattered was precision and patience. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, heat shimmered off the rocks. Maya didn't move, didn't fidget, she barely blinked, just watched. The valley below was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that made the hair on your neck stand up. She scanned the terrain methodically, her eye pressed to the scope, searching for anything out of place. A reflection, a shadow, movement where there shouldn't be any. Then she saw it. A glint just for a second. Sunlight catching on metal, she adjusted her scope, zoomed in, there. In the mouth of a cave partially hidden by vegetation, a figure, no, two figures, armed, watching the valley, watching the rangers. Her heart rate didn't spike. Her hands didn't shake. She'd trained for this. Thousands of hours on the range. Hundreds of scenarios. This was just another problem to solve. Another equation. She keyed her radio, kept her voice low, calm. Contact northeast. Cave entrance. Two hostiles, armed, observing your position. There was a pause, then Hale's voice tight with tension. Confirm you have visual. Confirmed. Range. She'd already calculated it. 812 meters. Another pause. Longer this time. She could almost hear the doubt in the silence. 800 meters, that was a difficult shot. Wind, heat distortion, elevation. Most snipers wouldn't attempt it unless absolutely necessary. And she was 19, untested, unknown. But Maya wasn't thinking about any of that. She was thinking about the two men in that cave. The weapons they carried. The position they held. If the rangers moved forward, they'd walk right into an ambush. If they retreated, the hostiles would call in reinforcements. There was no good option, except one. I have the shot, she said quietly. Silence. Then Hale's voice, careful and controlled. Stand by. She didn't argue, just kept watching. The figures hadn't moved. They were confident, hidden, safe. They had no idea she was there. No idea she could see them. That was the thing about being underestimated. People never saw you coming. They never expected you to be dangerous. And by the time they realized their mistake, it was too late. Minutes crawled by. Maya's finger rested beside the trigger, not on it. Never on it until you were ready to fire. That was the first rule, discipline, control. She controlled her breathing, slow, steady, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Her pulse was a metronome in her ears, calm. Even. She'd done this 1,000 times on ranges, in training, against paper targets and steel silhouettes, but this was different, this was real. These weren't targets, they were human beings with families, histories. Stories she'd never know, but they were also enemies, armed, dangerous, positioned to kill the men she was here to protect. The radio crackled, Hale's voice. Do you have the shot? Yes. Wind. 3 miles per hour, left to right. Confidence level. She didn't hesitate, high. Another pause. She could picture him down there weighing his options, trusting the judgment of a 19-year-old girl he'd met 3 hours ago, or gambling on a different approach. It wasn't an easy call. Command always said to trust your specialists, but trust was hard when the specialist looked like someone's kid sister. Take the shot, Hale finally said. Maya's world narrowed. The valley disappeared. The rangers disappeared. Everything disappeared except the reticle in her scope and the figure 800 meters away. She adjusted for wind, for elevation, for the Earth's rotation. Mathematics and instinct blending into something that felt almost like prayer. She exhaled slowly, halfway, 3/4. Her finger moved to the trigger, gentle pressure, steady, increasing. The rifle was an extension of her body, the scope an extension of her eye. She wasn't aiming anymore, she was simply waiting, waiting for that perfect moment between heartbeats, that instant of absolute stillness. And then, the rifle cracked. The sound echoed across the valley like thunder. Birds exploded from the trees. The figure in the cave entrance dropped, clean, instant, no suffering, just there one moment, gone the next. Maya didn't feel triumph, didn't feel remorse. She felt Nothing, just the clarity that came after action. The confirmation that physics and preparation had aligned exactly as they should. She cycled the bolt, ejected the spent casing, chambered another round. The second figure was moving now, startled, searching for the source of the shot. He had seconds to live, and he didn't even know it. She fired again. Another crack, another echo, another body falling. The cave entrance was empty now, silent. She scanned the area, no movement, no additional threats. She keyed her radio. Targets down, area clear. The radio was quiet for a moment. Then Rourke's voice, filled with something that sounded almost like awe. Jesus Christ! Did anyone else see that? Hale came on, professional, controlled. Good shooting, Tours, Rangers moving to confirm. She watched them advance through her scope. Careful, tactical. They reached the cave entrance, checked the bodies, confirmed the kills, clean headshots, both of them at 800 meters with wind, with heat distortion. With all the variables that could turn a perfect shot into a miss. She'd made it look easy, but it hadn't been easy. It had been years of training, years of doubt. Years of being told she was too young, too small, too female. And then proving over and over that none of that mattered. Not when it counted. Hale's voice crackled over the radio again. Tours, you just saved our asses, thank you. She didn't respond right away, just kept scanning, looking for more threats, because the job wasn't done until they were all back safe. That's what they taught her. Never celebrate until you're home. Never drop your guard until the mission's over. And even then, even when you're safe, even when everyone's patting you on the back and telling you what a hero you are, remember that you're not a hero. You're just someone who did what needed to be done. Someone who was ready when the moment came. Copy that, she finally said, quiet, simple. But something had shifted. She could feel it even from 200 meters away. The way the Rangers moved. The way they looked up toward her position, not with doubt anymore, not with skepticism, with something else. Something that felt like respect. She'd earned it, not with words, not with arguments, with action, with precision. With 2 perfect shots when it mattered most. Sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes the only way to make people see you is to show them what you can do. And then let the work speak for itself. She kept watching the valley, kept scanning for threats, because that was her job, that was what she did, and she was just getting started. The Rangers didn't ignore her anymore. When they moved to the next objective, Rourke checked in with her first. Asked if she had clear sightlines, if she needed anything. Hale included her in the tactical briefing, pointing to positions on the map, asking for her input. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it was acknowledgement, recognition. The invisible wall that had stood between her and the team had cracked. Not shattered, but cracked. And that was enough. They pushed deeper into the valley. Intelligence had been right. The caves were active. Weapon caches, supply routes, evidence of recent movement. The Rangers photographed everything, called in coordinates for airstrikes, mapped the network. Maya maintained overwatch, moving positions as they advanced, always staying high, always keeping them covered. Her eyes never stopped moving, scanning, searching, looking for the threat before it materialized. And then it did. She saw them first, a group emerging from a canyon to the east, 12, maybe 15. Armed with AKs and RPGs, moving fast, tactical, organized, not random fighters. These were trained, experienced, and they were flanking the Rangers' position. Maya's pulse quickened, but her voice stayed calm. Contact east, multiple hostiles, 15 plus, moving to flank. Hale's response was immediate. Fall back to defensive positions. Tours, can you slow them down? Could she? They were 600 meters out, moving. That meant leading the targets, accounting for their speed, their direction, the wind, the angle, everything, and she'd have to do it fast. Multiple shots, multiple targets under pressure, with lives depending on every round. This wasn't the range, this wasn't training, this was chaos. And chaos didn't care how many medals you had, how many qualifications. It only cared if you could perform when everything was falling apart. I can try, she said. Do it. She shifted her position, found solid ground, steadied the rifle. The group was moving in a loose formation, smart, harder to target. She picked the lead figure, calculated, breathed, fired, the rifle kicked. The figure dropped, the others scattered, dove for cover, but they didn't stop. They were professionals. They knew someone had eyes on them, they just didn't know where. Maya cycled the bolt, found another target, fired. The round kicked up dust 3 feet to the left. She adjusted, fired again. Hit, another body down. The group was confused now, panicking. They were taking fire but couldn't locate the shooter, couldn't return fire, couldn't do anything except scatter and hide. Rourke's voice came through. "She's a goddamn surgeon. Keep going, Tors." She didn't respond. Didn't have time. The enemy was adapting, moving erratically, using cover, making themselves harder to hit. She found another target, tracked him as he ran. Led him by 2 body lengths, squeezed, the rifle cracked. The figure tumbled mid-stride. 3 down, 12 left. The Rangers were repositioning below, finding cover, setting up a defensive perimeter. They needed more time. She gave it to them. 4 shots, 4 targets, some hit, some missed, but every shot forced the enemy to hesitate, to duck, to second-guess their advance. She was buying time with bullets. Each round was a message. "You're not safe, you're not hidden, I can see you." And eventually the message got through. The enemy group stopped advancing, pulled back, retreated into the canyon they'd emerged from. The threat was gone, for now. "Area clear," Maya said. Her voice was steady but her hands were trembling. Adrenaline. She'd fired 11 rounds in under 2 minutes, hit 6 targets, missed 5, not perfect, but enough. More than enough. Hale's voice came through, rough with relief. "Outstanding work, Tors. We're moving to your position. Sit tight." She lowered her rifle, exhaled. Her whole body was shaking now, not from fear, from the crash that always came after, the adrenaline dump. The realization of what had just happened. She'd just killed 6 human beings, 6 people who woke up this morning thinking they'd live through the day, who had families, friends, dreams. And she'd ended all of that with 6 pulls of a trigger. The weight of it settled on her shoulders like a physical thing, heavy, crushing. She'd been trained for this, prepared for this. But nothing really prepares you for taking a life. Nothing prepares you for the knowledge that you have the power to erase someone from existence. And you used it. Her breathing was ragged, uneven. She forced herself to slow down, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Control, discipline. This was the job, this was what she signed up for. These weren't innocent people, they were armed combatants, enemy fighters. They would have killed the Rangers without hesitation. She didn't have a choice, but somehow that logic didn't make it easier. It just made it necessary. The Rangers reached her position 20 minutes later. Hale was first. He looked at her carefully like he was seeing her for the first time. "You all right?" She nodded, didn't trust her voice. He studied her face, saw something there, something she didn't want him to see, the crack in the armor, the vulnerability underneath. But he didn't push, just put a hand on her shoulder. Brief, solid. "You did good, real good." Rourke came up behind him, grinning. 6 hostiles, 600 meters, moving targets, that's some movie shit right there, Tors. She managed a small smile, "Just got lucky." "Luck nothing," another Ranger said. "Guy named Kowalski, quiet until now. I've been doing this for 8 years, never seen shooting like that, especially not under pressure." The compliments kept coming, genuine, respectful. They weren't patronizing her anymore, weren't treating her like a kid who'd wandered into the wrong place. They were treating her like one of them, like someone who'd proven herself when it mattered, and that should have felt good. Should have filled the hollow space in her chest, but it didn't because she couldn't stop seeing the bodies, the way they dropped, the way their lives had just ended because of her, because she was good at this. Too good. They made camp that night in a defensive position, took shifts on watch. Maya volunteered for the midnight rotation, couldn't sleep anyway. When her shift came, she sat alone with her rifle staring out into the darkness. The stars were brilliant here, away from cities, away from light pollution. Just the universe stretching out forever, indifferent and eternal. It made her feel small, insignificant, like nothing she did mattered in the grand scheme of things. Like those 6 deaths were just drops in an ocean of violence that had been raging since the dawn of time. But that wasn't true. Those 6 deaths mattered, to someone, somewhere. And she carried that weight now, would carry it for the rest of her life. Footsteps behind her. Hale, He sat down without asking permission, stared out at the same darkness, didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice was quiet, thoughtful. "First kills." She hesitated, then nodded. "It gets easier," he said, then paused. "Actually, that's a lie. It doesn't get easier. You just learn to carry it better." She didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. He continued. "I've been in the Rangers for 12 years, lost count of how many people I've killed, but I remember the first one, kid, maybe 17, had an AK pointed at my squad. I didn't have a choice, but I still see his face sometimes, in dreams, in quiet moments. He's always there." He looked at her. "That's the price. That's what this job costs. You take lives to save lives, but you don't get to forget. You don't get to pretend it didn't happen. You carry it. And you hope that the lives you saved were worth it." She thought about that, about the Rangers who'd have walked into that ambush, who'd have been cut down by those 15 fighters, about the families who'd have gotten folding flags and condolence letters, about the children who'd have grown up without fathers. The weight was heavy, but maybe it was supposed to be. Maybe if it didn't weigh anything, you were doing it wrong. "Does it ever feel wrong?" she asked quietly. He considered that. Every time, but necessary and wrong aren't opposites. Sometimes you have to do wrong things for right reasons. That's war. That's what we signed up for. Doesn't make it easy, doesn't make it clean, but it makes it real. He stood up, stretched. "Get some sleep, Tors. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." She watched him walk away, disappear into the darkness, and she sat there with her rifle and her thoughts and the weight of 6 lives that would never go away. This was what they didn't tell you in recruiting videos, in the commercials with the stirring music and the proud families. They showed you the heroism, the valor, the medals and the ceremonies, but they didn't show you this. The quiet moments after, the weight that settled into your bones, the knowledge that you'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, that you were someone who could kill and would kill again. But they also didn't tell you about the other part, the part where you saved lives, where your actions meant someone else got to go home, got to hug their kids, got to live another day. That weight was real too, different but just as heavy, and maybe that was the balance. Maybe that was how you carried it, by remembering both sides, the cost and the purpose, the pain and the protection. She looked up at the stars again, endless, indifferent, beautiful, and she made herself a promise. Every shot from now on she'd remember why, not just the mission, not just the orders, but the people she was protecting, the lives she was saving. That would be her anchor, her reminder. When the weight got too heavy, when the faces started haunting her dreams, she'd remember that, and she'd hope it was enough. Morning came cold and gray. They broke camp before sunrise. The mission continued. More valley recon, more cave systems, more potential contacts. Maya took her position on Overwatch, scanning the terrain, watching for threats. The Rangers moved below, efficient and professional, and every time they looked up toward her position, she saw something different in their faces. Trust, confidence, respect. She'd earned that with blood, with precision, with 6 lives she'd carry forever. But she'd also earned something else, something harder to define, a place. Not just on this team, but in this world. This brutal, necessary, impossible world where young women could be warriors, could be protectors, could be deadly. And the paradox of that didn't escape her. She was 19. She should be in college, at parties, worrying about exams and boys and what to do with her life. Instead, she was on a mountain in Afghanistan with a rifle and a body count and a weight she'd carry until she died. But she'd made her choice, and she'd make it again, because someone had to stand on these mountains. Someone had to watch over the people who couldn't watch over themselves. Someone had to carry the weight so others didn't have to. And if that someone was a 19-year-old girl who looked too young and too small and too quiet, well, maybe that was the point. Maybe the best warriors weren't the ones who looked the part. Maybe they were the ones who understood the cost, who carried the weight willingly, who did what needed to be done, and then lived with it afterward. She kept watching, kept scanning, kept protecting, because that was her job now. That was who she was, not a hero, not a killer, just someone in between. Someone trying to do right in a world that made that almost impossible. And if that meant carrying ghosts for the rest of her life, she'd carry them. Because the alternative was letting good people die. and that weight was heavier than anything else. The mission lasted 6 more days. Long, brutal days of heat and dust and constant vigilance. Maya's role evolved from simple overwatch to something more integral. Hale consulted with her before every movement, asked for her read on terrain, on sightlines, on potential threats. The other rangers did the same. Rourke started calling her guardian angel after she spotted and neutralized a sniper position that could have wiped out half the team. Kowalski shared his rations with her when supplies ran low. Even the quietest members of the unit, the ones who barely spoke to anyone, nodded at her when they passed. Small gestures, but meaningful. She was part of the team now, fully, completely. Not because they'd decided to accept her, but because she'd proven herself in the only language that mattered out here: results. She took 17 more shots over those 6 days. Hit 14 targets. The math was cold, clinical, but necessary. Each target was a threat. Each threat eliminated meant the Rangers lived another day. She tried not to think about the faces, the lives, the families who'd never see their sons or brothers or fathers again. But sometimes, late at night when sleep wouldn't come, she couldn't help it. The faces piled up. 23 total. 23 people who'd been alive and now weren't. Because of her. Because of her training, her skill, her willingness to pull the trigger when others hesitated. The weight grew heavier, but so did her resolve, because she also saw the Rangers joke around at night, saw them pull out photos of their kids, their wives, their girlfriends. She heard them make plans for when they got home: fishing trips, ball games, quiet weekends doing nothing, normal life. The life they got to live because she was watching over them. That weight was different, lighter somehow. It didn't erase the other weight, but it balanced it, made it bearable. On the 7th day, they got extraction orders. Mission complete. Intelligence gathered, targets neutralized, time to go home. The helicopter came in low and fast, kicking up dust and noise and relief. They loaded up quickly, efficiently, every movement practiced and precise. Maya was last on. She took one final look at the valley, the mountains, the harsh, beautiful, deadly landscape that had tested her in ways she'd never imagined. And she knew something had changed, not just in how the Rangers saw her, in how she saw herself. She wasn't the same person who'd stepped off that transport 7 days ago. That person had been untested, uncertain, hoping she was good enough. Now she knew she was good enough, more than good enough. She was exceptional, and that knowledge came with its own burden, because exceptional meant you'd be called on again, and again, and again. Every time the mission was hard, every time the stakes were high, every time someone needed perfect shots under impossible circumstances, you'd be there, and you'd deliver. Because that's what exceptional meant. It meant you didn't get to fail, didn't get to hesitate, didn't get to be human when it mattered most. The helicopter lifted off. The valley fell away below them. The Rangers were celebrating, quiet fist bumps, tired smiles, the relief of surviving another mission. Hale caught her eye across the cabin, raised his canteen in a small salute. She nodded back. No smile, no celebration, just acknowledgement. They both knew what had happened out there, what it meant, what it cost, and words couldn't capture any of it, so they sat in silence. Warriors who'd done their job and would do it again. Because someone had to. Back at base, there was a debriefing, standard procedure. Hale gave his report, mentioned her contributions, multiple times, with detail, with praise. The commanding officer, a colonel with gray hair and hard eyes, listened carefully, took notes. When Hale finished, the colonel turned to Maya. "Sergeant Hale tells me you performed exceptionally out there. 23 confirmed kills, multiple threat neutralizations, saved Ranger lives on several occasions." She didn't know what to say, so she said nothing, just stood at attention. The colonel studied her, long and hard, like he was trying to reconcile what he'd heard with what he saw. A teenage girl, small, quiet, unremarkable. "How old are you, Tors?" "19, sir." "And you're comfortable with what happened out there, with the kills?" Was she? Comfortable wasn't the word. She'd never be comfortable with it, but she'd accepted it, carried it, made peace with the necessity if not the act itself. "I did my job, sir. I protected my team." "That you did," he made another note. "I'm putting you in for a commendation. Your actions were exemplary." He paused. "But I'm also recommending you for additional support. counseling, debriefing. What you experienced out there, it's a lot for anyone, let alone someone your age. Make sure you take advantage of the resources available. She nodded, knew he was right, knew she'd need help processing this, all of it, the kills, the weight, the knowledge that she'd crossed a threshold most people never even approached. But she also knew something else. She'd do it again without hesitation, because that was who she was now, who she'd become, not a killer, not a hero, just someone willing to carry the weight so others didn't have to. And if that meant talking to counselors and therapists and chaplains for the rest of her career, so be it. Small price for doing what mattered. The debriefing ended. She walked out into the bright Afghan sun. The base was busy, soldiers moving with purpose, vehicles coming and going, helicopters taking off and landing, normal military chaos. But it felt different now. She felt different, like she'd shed a skin she didn't know she was wearing. The person who'd arrived here had been hopping to prove something, to herself, to the doubters, to everyone who'd looked at her and seen only what she wasn't. Now she knew she didn't have to prove anything. Not anymore. The work spoke for itself. The results spoke for themselves, and that was enough. Rourke found her an hour later. She was cleaning her rifle in the armory, methodical, focused. The ritual that always calmed her mind. He leaned against the wall, didn't say anything for a while, just watched her work. Finally, we're shipping back to Germany next week. Hale's putting in a request. Wants you assigned to our unit permanently. She looked up, surprised. Permanently? Yeah, he thinks you're wasted in general assignment. Says you should be working with Rangers full-time. Rourke grinned. I agree. We could use someone who shoots like you. Someone who doesn't panic when shit goes sideways. I'm 19, she said quietly. I barely have any experience. Experience isn't just time served. It's what you do when it counts. And you, he shook his head. You did things out there most snipers with 10 years and couldn't do. Under pressure, under fire, without hesitation. That's not something you can teach. You either have it or you don't. And you have it. She didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to accept immediately. To jump at the chance to work with a team that respected her, that trusted her, that saw her as an equal. But another part hesitated. Because working with the Rangers meant more missions, more danger, more kills, more weight. And she was already carrying so much. Could she handle more, should she? Think about it, Rourke said. No pressure, but we'd be lucky to have you, and I think you'd be lucky to have us. Good team, good people, we take care of our own. He left her alone with her rifle and her thoughts. The offer was tempting, more than tempting. It was what she'd wanted from the beginning, to be part of something, to belong, to be valued for what she could do rather than judged for what she looked like. But it was also terrifying because belonging meant responsibility, meant people depending on you, meant carrying not just your own weight but theirs too. And what if she failed? What if the next shot missed? What if her hands shook at the wrong moment? What if someone died because she wasn't good enough? She finished cleaning her rifle, reassembled it, checked the action, perfect, like always. She trained for thousands of hours to make sure it was always perfect, to make sure she was always ready. And maybe that was the answer. Maybe you couldn't guarantee you'd never fail, but you could guarantee you'd be ready if the moment came. You could train, prepare, practice, put in the work, and then trust that when it mattered, your body would remember what your mind might forget. She made her decision, walked to Hale's office, knocked. He looked up from paperwork, smiled when he saw her. Tors, come in. What can I do for you? Rourke told me about the assignment request, she said. I want in, if you'll have me. Hale's smile widened. Glad to hear it. You earned your place out there, and I meant what I said in the debriefing. You're exceptional. We need people like you. People who can perform under pressure, who don't crack when things go bad. He paused. But I need you to understand something. This life, it's hard, harder than most people realize. You'll see things, do things, carry things that don't go away, ever. And you're so young, you have other options, other paths you could transfer. Get a normal posting, do your time and get out. Live a regular life. I don't want a regular life, she said quietly. I want to matter, to do something that means something, and out there, she gestured toward the window, toward the mountains beyond. Out there I mattered, I made a difference. I saved lives. That's not something you get in a regular posting. That's not something you find in a normal life. He studied her, saw the determination in her eyes, the conviction, and nodded slowly. All right then, welcome to the team, officially. We'll get the paperwork started when we get back to Germany. Until then, you're with us. Guardian angel and all that. She smiled, small, genuine. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. We've got a lot more missions ahead, a lot more mountains to climb, but at least you'll have people watching your back, same way you watch ours. She left his office feeling lighter, not because the weight was gone. It wasn't. It never would be, but because she wasn't carrying it alone anymore. She had a team, a purpose, a place in the world, and sometimes that was all you could ask for. Sometimes that was enough. Germany was different, cold where Afghanistan had been hot, green where it had been brown, safe where it had been deadly. The Ranger compound was state-of-the-art, training facilities, shooting ranges, gyms, recreation areas, everything a soldier could need to stay sharp between deployments. Maya threw herself into it, training, studying, practicing. She wasn't content to rest on what she'd accomplished in Afghanistan. That was one mission, one success. She needed to be consistent, reliable. The person they could count on every time, not just once. The other Rangers accepted her fully now. She was invited to meals, to downtime activities, to the informal gatherings where ranks mattered less and camaraderie mattered more. She was careful not to overstep, didn't try to be one of the guys, didn't pretend to be something she wasn't, just stayed herself, quiet, focused, present, and that seemed to be enough. They respected her for who she was, not who they wanted her to be. But there were moments, small ones, when she caught glimpses of doubt, not from the Rangers she deployed with but from others, new transfers, guys who'd heard the stories but hadn't seen the proof, who looked at her and saw what everyone used to see. A kid, a girl, someone who didn't belong. She didn't let it bother her, didn't try to prove anything to them, just waited, because she knew how this worked. Words didn't convince anyone, only actions did, and eventually they'd see. One way or another. The call came 3 months later. New mission, high-value target in Syria. Intelligence suggested a weapons smuggler operating near the Turkish border, dangerous, connected, responsible for arming insurgent groups across the region. The Rangers were tasked with capture or kill. Maya's role, Overwatch, again, always, it's what she was good at, what she'd proven she could do. Hale briefed the team, standard tactical overview, insertion point, extraction plan, contingencies. When he got to sniper support, he didn't hesitate, didn't explain, just pointed at Maya. Tors has Overwatch, any questions? There was one, a new guy, transfer from another unit. Name was Briggs, big, confident, the kind of soldier who'd never been told he wasn't good enough. He looked at Maya, then at Hale. No offense, sir, but shouldn't we have someone with more experience on a mission this important? She's what, 19, 20? The room went quiet. The Rangers who'd been in Afghanistan bristled. Rourke actually started to stand up, but Hale raised a hand. Calm, controlled, he looked at Briggs. Tors has 23 confirmed kills, multiple tactical interventions, 0 misses when it mattered. She saved Ranger lives under fire and performed at levels most snipers never reach. So to answer your question, no, we shouldn't have someone with more experience. We have exactly who we need. Briggs opened his mouth, closed it, nodded slowly. Understood, sir. Hale turned back to the map, continued the briefing, but Maya had seen it, the flicker of doubt in Briggs' eyes. He'd heard Hale's words, but he hadn't believed them, not really, because how could he? How could anyone who hadn't seen her work believe that a teenage girl could do what they said she could? It wasn't personal, it was just human nature. People believed what they could see, what fit their expectations, and she didn't fit, would never fit, so she'd have to prove it again, like always. The mission launched 48 hours later. Night insertion. They came in low over the desert, the helicopter blacked out, flying on instruments and instinct. The target compound was small, isolated but well defended, guards, cameras, dogs. The smuggler didn't take chances, didn't trust anyone, smart, but not smart enough, because he didn't know the Rangers were coming, didn't know they had a sniper who could see in the dark, who could make shots that seemed impossible, who never missed when lives were on the line. Maya set up on a ridgeline 800 meters from the compound. Same distance as that first shot in Afghanistan. Somehow fitting, she liked the symmetry, the poetry of it, 800 meters, the distance where physics and skill had to merge perfectly, where there was no room for error, no second chances. She settled in. Scanned the compound through her night vision scope, counted guards, noted patrol patterns, marked weapon emplacements, built a mental map of threats and priorities. This was her world, the world of shadows and silence, where patience was a weapon and stillness was armor. Hale's voice crackled in her ear. Guardian Angel, this is ground. Status. In position. I count 6 guards on patrol, 2 stationary at the main entrance. Possible additional inside the compound. No clear view of the target yet. Copy, we're moving to breach point. Call out threats as you see them. Roger. She watched them move. Shadows within shadows, fast, professional. They'd done this hundreds of times, but it never got routine, never got safe. Because all it took was one guard looking the wrong direction, one dog catching the wrong scent. One mistake and the whole mission went sideways. That's where she came in. She was the insurance, the fail-safe, the person who made sure mistakes didn't become disasters. A guard rounded the corner of the compound, walking right toward where the Rangers would be in 30 seconds. She keyed her mic. Contact, northeast corner, single guard, mobile, intercept in 30 seconds. Hale's response was immediate. Can you take him? She tracked the guard through her scope, calculated, adjusted for distance and angle. Affirmative. Do it suppressed. She'd already attached the suppressor. The rifle was ready. She was ready. The guard stopped, lit a cigarette. The flame briefly illuminated his face. Young, maybe 25, tired, bored, just doing his job. Probably didn't even know what his boss was really smuggling. Probably just a local kid trying to make money. Probably. She stopped herself, couldn't think like that, couldn't humanize the target. He was a threat, that's all, a problem that needed solving. She centered the reticle on his chest, breathed out, squeezed. The suppressed rifle made almost no sound, just a soft thump. The guard dropped, crumpled. The cigarette fell from his hand, scattered embers on the ground. She cycled the bolt, scanned for reaction. No one had heard, no one had seen. He was just gone. Another ghost to add to her collection. Threat neutralized, she said quietly. Good shooting, moving to breach. The Rangers flowed into the compound like water, silent, deadly, efficient. Maya kept scanning, looking for problems, for surprises, for anything that could compromise the mission. Another guard appeared on the roof. She called it out, took the shot, another body down, then another. The guards were dying and didn't even know they were under attack, didn't hear the shots, didn't see the Rangers, just felt the impacts and fell. It was clinical, surgical, and deeply, profoundly wrong, but necessary. Always necessary. The breach went smooth, too smooth. Maya's instincts tingled, something was off. The compound had been too lightly defended, the guards too easy. This didn't feel right. She scanned harder, deeper, looking for the thing she was missing, and then she saw it. Movement. In a building they'd marked as storage, a shadow that didn't belong. She zoomed in, enhanced the image, saw a figure setting up a weapon, not a rifle, something bigger, an RPG, pointed right at the breach point where the Rangers were gathering. RPG, she shouted into the mic. Southwest building, 2nd floor, window facing breach point, engaging. She didn't wait for confirmation, didn't have time. The figure was aiming, finger on the trigger, seconds away from firing. She adjusted, led the target, accounted for the angle, the distance. The fact that she was shooting through a window and fired, the glass shattered, the figure jerked, dropped. The RPG clattered to the floor, didn't fire. The Rangers scattered anyway, training taking over, but the threat was gone. The disaster averted because she'd seen it, called it, stopped it. Hale's voice, shaken. Jesus Christ, Tors, how did you? Just doing my job, she interrupted, kept scanning. Because the job wasn't done. Wouldn't be done until they had the target and were extracted. Compound is not clear. Assume additional hostiles. She was right, 2 more appeared, then 3. The smuggler had backup, reinforcements, and they were panicking, firing wildly, trying to suppress the Rangers, trying to escape. Maya engaged systematically, Target, fire, cycle, target, fire, cycle, each shot deliberate, precise. No wasted ammunition, no hesitation. She was a machine, a system. Input and output, problem and solution, and the solutions kept falling. Briggs' voice came through, strained. I'm hit, I'm hit. Maya's scope snapped to his position, saw him on the ground, saw the blood, saw a hostile moving toward him, weapon raised, execution position. She didn't think, didn't calculate, just fired, pure instinct. The hostile dropped 3 feet from Briggs. Another ranger pulled him to cover, applied pressure to the wound. But he was alive because she'd been watching, because she'd been ready, because she never stopped being vigilant. The firefight lasted 4 more minutes, felt like hours. When the shooting stopped, 8 more bodies lay scattered in the compound. The smuggler was in custody. Briggs was wounded but stable. The mission was a success, costly, messy, but a success. Maya stayed on overwatch until the extraction helicopter arrived, until every ranger was loaded, until they were wheels up and gone. Only then did she allow herself to breathe, to lower her rifle, to acknowledge what had just happened. 13 kills, 1 mission. She'd stopped counting bodies after the first few, but the number found her anyway, always did. 13 people who wouldn't see tomorrow, 13 families who'd lost someone, 13 ghosts to add to the others. The weight pressed down, heavier than ever, but so did something else. Gratitude, relief. The knowledge that Briggs was alive, that the Rangers had made it home, that her vigilance had mattered, again. On the helicopter ride back, Briggs caught her eye. He looked pale, shocky, but conscious. He lifted his hand, made a small gesture, thanks, respect, acknowledgement, and she understood. He'd doubted her before, questioned her. And then she'd saved his life, proven herself in the way that mattered most, not with words, not with credentials, with action, with results, with a shot that came when everything was falling apart and only precision could make the difference. Hale leaned over, had to shout over the helicopter noise. That RPG call was incredible. How did you even see that? She thought about it, about the thousands of hours on the range, the training scenarios, the muscle memory and pattern recognition and instinct that came from doing something so many times it became part of your DNA. I don't know, she finally said. I just looked for the thing that didn't fit, the detail that was wrong, and there it was. He shook his head. That's not something you can teach, that's a gift, and we're damn lucky to have you. She didn't feel lucky, felt tired, worn down. The adrenaline was fatting, leaving behind exhaustion and the weight, always the weight, but she also felt something else, purpose, clarity, the knowledge that this was what she was meant to do, not because she enjoyed it, not because it was easy, but because she was good at it, and because people lived when she did it right. That had to count for something, had to mean something. Even when the cost was measured in bodies and nightmares, and pieces of yourself you'd never get back. She closed her eyes, listened to the helicopter's roar, felt the vibration in her bones, and let herself drift, not sleep, just drift, floating in that space between consciousness and rest, where thoughts blurred and the weight lifted just enough to breathe. Tomorrow there would be debriefings, medical checks, reports, the machinery of military bureaucracy grinding on. But right now, in this moment, she was just a soldier going home, carrying her ghosts, protecting her team, doing what needed to be done. And that was enough. It had to be. The months blurred together after Syria. Mission after mission. Countries she'd never heard of, threats that morphed and evolved, but the pattern stayed the same. Insertion, overwatch, protection, extraction. She became known, not famous, never famous, but respected, whispered about in the community. The young sniper, the girl who never missed, the guardian angel. Stories spread, some true, some exaggerated. She didn't encourage them, didn't feed the legend, just kept doing her job. Kept watching over her team, kept carrying the weight. Her kill count climbed. She stopped tracking after 100. It became meaningless, a statistic. What mattered wasn't the number but the why. Each kill represented a threat neutralized, a ranger protected, a mission completed. She framed it that way, had to frame it that way. Because if she let herself think about the individual faces, the individual lives, she'd drown in it. The weight would crush her, so she compartmentalized, separated the act from the person, the job from the cost. It wasn't healthy. The counselors told her that, but it was necessary. The only way to keep functioning, the only way to stay sharp. She turned 21 on a mission in Yemen. The Rangers made her a cake from MREs and energy bars, sang happy birthday in a safe house while gunfire echoed in the distance. It should have been absurd, should have been depressing, but somehow it wasn't. It was perfect, because these were her people, her family, the ones who understood, who carried the same weight, who did the same impossible things and then pretended it was normal. You couldn't explain this life to civilians. Couldn't make them understand, but here in this safe house with these warriors, she didn't have to explain, they already knew. Rourke gave her a patch, custom-made, a guardian angel with a sniper rifle, wings spread, scope sight for a halo. It was tacky, inappropriate, absolutely perfect. She sewed it onto her gear that night, wore it on every mission after, not because she thought she was an angel, but because it reminded her why she was there, what her purpose was: to watch over, to protect, to be the eyes that saw threats before they materialized, the hand that stopped disasters before they happened. That was worth something, even when it cost everything. The nightmares started around then, dreams where her shots missed, where Rangers died because she hesitated, where the weight of all those bodies came crashing down and buried her alive. She'd wake up gasping, sweating, checking her hands to make sure they were steady, that she could still do the job. The counselors increased her sessions, talked about PTSD, about trauma, about the toll this life was taking. She listened, nodded, took their advice when it made sense, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop. Because who would take her place? Who would watch over the Rangers? Some other sniper who hadn't proven themselves, who might miss when it mattered. She couldn't risk that. Couldn't let someone else carry a burden she was built for. 6 months after Yemen, they got orders for a mission in Ukraine, embedded with local forces. Training and support, supposed to be low risk. No direct combat, just advisory. Maya almost didn't go. The counselors suggested she take leave, recover, process, but Hale asked her personally, said he trusted her more than any other sniper, said the Rangers felt safer with her watching over them. How could she say no to that? How could she abandon the people who'd become her family? So she went. Packed her gear, checked her rifle, and deployed again. The mission went bad on day 3. What was supposed to be a training exercise turned into an ambush. Russian-backed separatists, heavy weapons. The Ukrainian forces were pinned down. The Rangers were supposed to be observers but became participants. Chaos, confusion, the worst kind of situation. Maya was 2 kilometers away, too far for effective support, but she ran anyway, full gear, heavy pack, rifle bouncing against her back. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs screamed and her vision blurred. Ran until she found a position. High ground, clear sightlines, and then she went to work. 15 targets, 15 kills, rapid fire. No time for perfect shots, just good enough shots. Center mass, suppression, disruption. She was fire support, artillery. A one-woman assault breaking the enemy's momentum. The separatists scattered, retreated. The Ukrainians pushed forward. The Rangers extracted under cover. And Maya kept firing until her barrel was hot enough to burn skin, until her shoulder ached from recoil, until there were no more targets, no more threats. Just silence and smoke, and the aftermath of violence. She nearly collapsed getting back to base. Hale found her, physically carried her the last 100 meters. She tried to protest, too proud, too stubborn, but her body had finally reached its limit. Pushed too far, too hard, too long. They gave her IV fluids, made her rest. The doctor said she was dehydrated, exhausted, borderline hypothermic. 1 more kilometer and she might have died, but she'd made it, done her job, saved her team. That was all that mattered. Briggs visited her in medical, sat by her bed. Didn't say anything for a long time. Then, "You ran 2 kilometers, full gear, in under 12 minutes, to save people you could barely see. People you weren't even supposed to be supporting." She shrugged, winced at the pain. Seemed like the thing to do. Most snipers would have called it in. Let command handle it, stayed safe. "I'm not most snipers." He smiled, sad, knowing. "No, you're not. You're someone who almost killed herself to save strangers. Someone who carries more weight than anyone should have to carry. Someone who," he trailed off, struggled to find words. Someone who makes the rest of us look like amateurs. That's not true. It is, and you need to hear it because I don't think you understand what you do, how you do it. You're 21 years old and you're the best sniper I've ever seen. Better than guys with 20 years in. Better than legends, and it's not just your shooting, it's your commitment, your willingness to sacrifice, your refusal to quit even when quitting makes sense. He leaned forward. But that's also what scares me because people like you, people who give everything, they burn out, they break. And I don't want to see that happen to you. She didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to argue, to insist she was fine, that she could handle it. But another part, a quieter part, knew he was right. She was burning, had been burning for months, maybe years, and eventually the fuel would run out. The fire would consume everything, and there'd be nothing left, just ash, just ghosts, just the empty shell of someone who'd given too much for too long. I don't know how to stop, she admitted quietly. Then don't stop, but slow down, take breaks, talk to people, let us help you carry the weight. He stood, put his hand on her shoulder. You saved my life in Syria, saved all our lives more times than I can count. Let us return the favor. Let us take care of you the way you take care of us. He left her alone with her thoughts, and she lay there in the medical bay, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how to do what he'd asked, how to slow down when people were depending on her, how to take breaks when threats didn't, how to let others carry weight she'd shouldered alone for so long. It seemed impossible, like trying to unlearn breathing, but maybe that was the point. Maybe she needed to learn a new way, a sustainable way, a way that didn't end with her broken and empty and used up. The counselor visited the next day. Older woman, kind eyes, patient demeanor. They'd talked before, many times, but this felt different, more urgent, like they both knew something had shifted. You almost died, the counselor said without preamble. Running to that position, your body was shutting down. Another few minutes and you'd have collapsed, possibly died, for a training exercise that wasn't even your responsibility. People needed help. People always need help. That doesn't mean you have to be the one who provides it, especially when providing it might kill you. But I'm good at it, better than anyone. I know, everyone knows, but being good at something doesn't mean you have to destroy yourself doing it. The counselor paused. Can I ask you something? When was the last time you felt happy, not satisfied, not accomplished, actually happy? Maya thought about it, tried to remember, couldn't. Everything was mission, weight, responsibility, even the good moments, the celebrations, the camaraderie. They were all tinged with the knowledge of what came next, what always came next. More missions, more threats, more kills. I don't know, she finally said. That's what I thought, and that's why I'm recommending you for extended leave. 6 months, stateside, no missions, no deployments, just time to recover, to remember who you are outside of this. I can't, the team needs. The team will survive. They have other snipers, other support. You're not the only person who can do this job, you're just the one who's been doing it at the cost of everything else. The counselor's voice softened. Maya, you're 21 years old, you should be living, experiencing, growing. Instead, you're carrying the weight of 100 ghosts and running yourself into the ground. That's not sustainable. That's not life. That's slow suicide. The words hit hard, because they were true. She was dying, not physically, not yet, but in every other way that mattered. The person she'd been was gone, replaced by someone harder, colder, more efficient, less human. And if she kept going, kept burning, that process would complete. She'd become a perfect weapon, empty of everything except function. Is that what she wanted? Is that who she wanted to be? 6 months, the counselor repeated. No arguments, no negotiations. Command has already approved it. You report to the recovery program next week. And Maya, she met her eyes. This isn't punishment, this is preservation. You've given enough, more than enough. Now it's time to take something back. America felt foreign. She'd been deployed for so long, lived in crisis for so many months that normal life seemed incomprehensible. Traffic, shopping, people complaining about slow Wi-Fi. It all felt surreal, disconnected from reality. How could these things matter when she'd spent the last year watching people die? When she'd killed over 100 people? When she carried weight that made her bones ache? But this was home, or supposed to be. So she tried. Rented an apartment. Attended the recovery program. Sat in group therapy with other soldiers who'd seen too much, done too much, lost too much. At first she didn't talk, just listened. Heard stories that mirrored her own. Different details, same weight, different missions, same ghosts. And slowly, carefully, she started to open up, started to share, not everything. Some things were too raw, too private, but enough to begin the process of. What? Healing seemed too optimistic, recovery too clinical, maybe just existing. Learning to exist without the constant vigilance, the constant pressure, the constant need to be perfect or people died. She started running, not training runs, not tactical movement, just running through parks, along rivers, no destination, no purpose except the movement itself, the rhythm of feet on pavement, breath in lungs, heart beating, proof she was still alive, still human, still capable of something other than killing. It helped, not completely, but enough to make the days bearable, to give her something to do with the energy that usually went into missions, into protecting, into carrying. 3 months in, she met someone. A woman named Sarah, librarian, civilian, no connection to the military. They met at a coffee shop. Literally bumped into each other. Coffee spilled, apologies exchanged. And somehow conversation. Sarah didn't know who Maya was, didn't know what she'd done. Just saw a young woman who seemed lost, alone, in need of kindness. So she offered it. Coffee, conversation, eventually friendship. Maya didn't tell her about the missions, the kills, the wait. Just let herself be normal for a few hours a week, talking about books and movies and things that didn't involve death. It was strange, uncomfortable, like wearing clothes that didn't fit, but also necessary. Sarah represented something Maya had forgotten existed, a world without violence, without constant threat, where people lived and laughed and worried about mundane things, where 19-year-olds were supposed to be, not on mountains with rifles, not carrying ghosts, just living. And being around Sarah reminded Maya that she could have that, if she wanted, if she was willing to walk away. But could she? That was the question that haunted her. Could she really leave, abandon the Rangers, the missions, the purpose that had defined her for so long? What would she even do? Who would she be without the rifle, without the weight? She'd built her entire identity around being the guardian angel, the protector, the sniper who never missed. Take that away and what was left? Just a traumatized kid with nightmares and a body count. That didn't seem like much to build a life on. 5 months into her leave, Hale called. She almost didn't answer. Knew what it would be, an offer, a mission, a chance to come back, and part of her wanted to, desperately, wanted to return to the only world that made sense, where she had value, purpose, where her skills mattered and people depended on her. But another part hesitated, because going back meant giving up what she'd found here. The running, the friendship, the possibility of something different, something lighter. She answered. Tours, Hale's voice, warm, familiar. How you doing? Better, she said, meant it partially. Good, that's real good. You deserved the break. Hell, you earned it 10 times over. A pause. I'm calling because we have a situation. High-value target, extremely dangerous. And command specifically requested you for Overwatch. Her heart rate spiked, old instincts kicking in. What's the target? Can't say over the phone, but it's big, important, and honestly, I don't trust anyone else to make this shot. It's that critical. There it was, the hook, the thing that would pull her back. Because if it was that important, if lives depended on it, how could she say no? How could she let someone else take a shot that might fail, that might cost Ranger lives? She'd never forgive herself, never be able to live with that weight. And Hale knew it, knew her, knew exactly what to say to make her come back. How long do I have? She asked. 72 hours, wheels up from Germany. I'm still on leave for another month. I know, and if you say no, I'll understand. Command will find someone else, it just won't be the best, won't be you. Another pause. But Maya, I'm not just calling as your commanding officer. I'm calling as someone who cares about you, someone who's seen what this life costs, and I need to ask, are you ready? Really ready? Because if you're not, if you need more time, you have to say so. Your well-being matters more than any mission. She appreciated that, the honesty, the concern, but it didn't change the equation. Someone had to make the shot. Someone had to watch over the Rangers. And if that someone was the best, if that someone could guarantee success, didn't she have an obligation to be that person? Wasn't that what all her training, all her sacrifice, all her wait had been for? "I'll be there," she said quietly. "You sure?" "No, but I'll be there anyway." Hale was silent for a long moment. Then, "Thank you, and Maya, when this is over, when you come back, we need to talk about your future, about whether this life is sustainable, because I meant what I said, your well-being matters, and I'm starting to think we're asking too much, from someone too young who's already given too much." She hung up, sat in her apartment, stared at the walls. The weight was already returning, settling back onto her shoulders like an old coat, familiar, suffocating. She had 72 hours. 72 hours to decide if this was who she wanted to be. If this was the life she wanted to live. She could say no, could refuse, could choose the running and the friendship and the possibility of normal. But would that haunt her? Would she spend the rest of her life wondering if someone died because she wasn't there? Because she chose comfort over duty. She called Sarah, asked to meet. They sat in the same coffee shop where they'd first bumped into each other, and Maya told her not everything but enough about the deployment, the missions, the choice she had to make. Sarah listened quietly, didn't judge, didn't try to convince her either way, just listened. When Maya finished, Sarah reached across the table, took her hand. "Only you can make this choice, but I need you to understand something. Whatever you choose, whoever you are, you deserve to be happy. You deserve to live, not just survive, live." "What if living means other people dying?" Maya asked. "What if it doesn't? What if there are other snipers, other soldiers? What if the world doesn't actually need you to sacrifice everything?" Sarah squeezed her hand. "I know you think you're special, that you're the only one who can do this, and maybe you're right. Maybe you are the best, but being the best at something doesn't mean you have to destroy yourself doing it. Sometimes the brave thing isn't going back. It's staying. It's choosing yourself." Maya wanted to believe that, wanted to think she could make that choice, but she knew herself. Knew that if she didn't go, if she stayed, she'd spend every day wondering, doubting, regretting. She was too far in, too committed, too defined by this role. Maybe someday she could walk away, but not now, not when Rangers were counting on her, not when the mission was that important. She had to go back, one more time, and then, maybe then she could think about choosing differently. She booked a flight to Germany, packed her gear, said goodbye to Sarah. It felt like leaving something precious behind, something she might never find again, but she did it anyway, because this was who she was, the guardian angel, the sniper who never missed, the woman who carried weight so others didn't have to, and until she figured out how to be someone else, this was all she had. This was all she was. The flight felt like traveling backward in time. Every mile was a step away from normal and toward war, away from peace and toward violence. By the time she landed, the transformation was complete. She wasn't Maya anymore, wasn't the woman who ran in parks and drank coffee with friends. She was Tor's, sniper, specialist, weapon. And that was exactly what the mission needed. Hale met her at the airfield, looked her over carefully, saw something he didn't like in her eyes but didn't comment, just handed her the mission brief. High-value target, terrorist financier, responsible for funding attacks across 3 continents, extremely cautious, rarely exposed, but intelligence had his location. A meeting, 3 days from now, open ground, perfect sniper opportunity, except the shot was impossible. 1,400 meters, wind, heat, multiple environmental variables. A shot that would test every skill she had. A shot that would require perfection. A shot that only she could make. She read the brief, felt the weight settle fully back into place, felt her body shift into mission mode, felt everything soft and human get locked away, compartmentalized. This was what she was good at, what she was built for, and for the next 72 hours nothing else would exist, just the mission, the target, the shot, and the absolute requirement that she not miss. Because if she did, the financier would disappear, more attacks would happen, more people would die. That was the weight. That was always the weight. The knowledge that her failure had consequences. That missing meant death. Not hers, but someone's, always someone's. She spent the next 3 days preparing. Range time, calculations, weather predictions, equipment checks. She barely slept, barely ate, just focused, narrowed her entire existence down to a single point, a single moment, the instant when she'd have to be perfect. And when that moment came, when she was lying prone on a rooftop 1,400 meters from the target, when every variable was accounted for and every calculation was complete, when her finger rested on the trigger and the world held its breath, she thought about Sarah, about running, about choice, about the possibility of being someone other than this. And then she exhaled, squeezed, let the rifle speak. Let physics and training and sacrifice merge into a single action, and watched through her scope as the impossible shot found its mark, as the financier dropped, as the mission succeeded, as she proved once again that she was exactly who everyone said she was, the best, the guardian angel, the woman who never missed. But this time, as she packed up her rifle and prepared for extraction, she felt something different, not satisfaction, not pride, just exhaustion. The weight wasn't just heavy anymore, it was crushing, and for the first time she wondered if maybe Sarah had been right. Maybe being the best didn't mean she had to keep doing this. Maybe there was a point where sacrifice became self-destruction. Maybe she'd already passed that point. Maybe it was time to choose differently. On the flight home, Hale sat next to her. "Hell of a shot," he said. She nodded. "I mean it, 1,400 meters, wind shifting, heat distortion, that was artistry, perfection." "It was just math," she said quietly. "No, it was more than that. It was everything you are, everything you've trained to be." He paused. "But I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Was it worth it?" She looked at him, saw genuine concern, genuine worry. "I don't know anymore." "That's what I thought." He leaned back, closed his eyes. "When we land, you're going back on leave, full extension, 6 more months, no arguments, no early returns. You need time to figure out who you want to be. If you want to come back after that, we'll talk. But Maya, you can't keep doing this, not like this, not at this cost. You're burning yourself out, and I can't let that happen, won't let that happen." She wanted to argue, to insist she was fine, but she wasn't fine. Hadn't been fine for a long time, so she just nodded, accepted, and let herself imagine just for a moment what 6 more months might look like. 6 months without missions, without weight, without the constant need to be perfect. It seemed impossible, fantastical, but also necessary, maybe even essential, because Hale was right. She was burning, had been burning for years, and the fuel was almost gone. Time to choose. Time to decide if she wanted to burn out completely, or if she wanted to find another way, a lighter way, a way that didn't end with her empty and broken and alone. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts, and sometimes the most dignified action is knowing when to stop.